Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to another video for Eve Echoes. Now, I am out at Masuna at the moment, so I wasn't expecting to actually have to film another video during this week. I was hoping that just the balance update videos that I'd already created would be enough to see me through. Now, unfortunately, for me at least, and fortunately for all of us, which includes myself crazily enough, we have actually had an update about the balance update. Yes, we're getting updates about updates now from the developers, basically explaining how the feedback is going to have changed things. So in today's video, that's exactly what I'm going to be going through. We're going to have a look at the update here, the balance adjustments based on test server feedback, so what is going to be changing based on the original notes. They will do a final balance note, I think, before this all goes live. And to answer the obvious first question, no, we do not know when the balance patch is still going live. We know that it will be a Wednesday. It's always a Wednesday. Whether that's the 20th, 27th, or 4th is up for debate. Had you asked me before today, I would have suggested that the 27th was the most likely because the 20th was a bit close to have not had anything about the feedback, and the 4th seems a bit far off, especially since we've got the industrial update on the way too. However, the fact that we've got the balance adjustment sort of update here suggests that it might be this Wednesday, the 20th, so my money is still on the 20th or the 27th. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump in on this one and see what has changed. This is based on feedback that the developers have received from people supposedly in the test, and I do say supposedly because unfortunately I am painfully aware of several people who openly announced and showcased and documented that they were going to be giving feedback to the developers despite not having been in the test themselves. This makes things difficult for the developers. Ultimately, how do you know that if you've got 10 bits of feedback, some of them are saying that, say, the Interceptor changes are perfect, some of them are saying that the Interceptor changes are too much and that they should be reverted, and some people are saying that they're nowhere near enough, Interceptors are still ridiculously overpowered. How do you know how many of those are actually authentic feedback and how many of them are just idiots who want to have their say despite not understanding what is even going on? And I'm going to use that term idiots, because if you're giving feedback to the developers without any actual experience on the matter, it's akin to standing in a doctor's waiting room and trying to diagnose the other patients. It is not a good idea, and it ultimately results in some very bad situations. But let's have a look at the notes. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your valuable feedback during the balance test. We did a few adjustments shown below based on your suggestions, hopefully also based on some testing that they did regarding those suggestions. The final balance version will be available for everyone soon. Stay tuned. Number 1, the speed bonus provided by ship command skills has been decreased from 45% to 40%. This is almost nothing anymore. All of that application stuff that we saw regarding missiles, it's a tiny drop now. Rather than going from 45% down to 20%, which frankly still seemed to be enough, it's now going from 45% to 40%. Now, I'm a little bit split on this one, because this does help me with speed tanking. This means that the frigates and destroyers, and indeed the covert ops cruisers that I like to fly, are still going to be amazing at speed tanking. And across the board, actually, this was not a problem for me. I tried the covert ops cruisers, including the Blackbird, and was still able to speed tank with them against things that I would expect to be able to speed tank with. This kind of strikes me a little bit as people looking at this and going, yeah, I don't like the fact that I've slowed down this much, the numbers are, worrying, so here's the feedback on that. I do think that this is a drastic reversion of the change they originally had in mind. On the other hand, that change to me massively seems to favour large weaponry, which quite frankly does not need any buffing overall. Battleships are still pretty much the best thing in the game for most things, and the fact that battleships can comfortably handle frigates on their own is disconcerting to say the least. So I guess on one hand I'm a little bit like, why did they revert this so heavily? On the other, it's good news for me, so we'll see how it pans out. Number 2, new skill, Fighters, which can increase the hit point and flight velocity of fighters. This is in direct feedback to the anti-drone pulse bombs, which of course deal a flat amount of damage to drones and fighters within the area of effect. Now, ultimately here they've said, okay, perhaps this was doing too much damage to fighters. Rather than try and change how the bomb applies its damage, they have instead added a new skill, which means that carrier pilots can increase the hit points and the flight velocity of their fighters. And to me, that's actually a really elegant way of doing it. I like that change. That is a way that still means that drones are going to be affected, but carriers are going to be a little less affected. It kind of makes sense. You don't really want to spend a whole load of time, effort, and energy making these exciting new carriers only to then completely kneecap them a few months later. Now, I don't believe that they were kneecapped, but I think this is a way of assuaging some of those fears that if folks were worried that their carriers were going to be useless, they can train into this skill and it's going to make them better. Awesome. Number 3, anti-drone pulse bomb damage has been reduced by 10%, and it's temporarily unavailable. Improvements in the drone AI are in progress. The drone range extender has been reverted to its original status. Now, the drone range extender was the rig that was actually extending the orbit range, basically, that drones would fly at and apply their damage from. Looks like improvements to the drone AI are in progress, so that was causing some issues there. The drone pulse bomb damage has been reduced by 10%, but it's temporarily unavailable. Now, the 10% drop in damage, I'm actually okay for. If you remember when I did the anti-drone pulse bomb video, I did suggest that actually the damage might be a touch high. A lot of people were testing using the Meta Level 5 and Meta Level 8 modules. We know from the patch notes we're only getting the 7 and 9s to start with. Actually, now that said, looks like we're not getting these on launch. That said, they've kind of already done their job. We were having this discussion in the CC chat for in the Eve Echoes Discord where people were saying that, hang on, is this really going to stop drones? And I kind of said, well, if you look at the main alliances, most of them have just redone their doctrines to be less reliant on drones, which means even if no one ever fits one of these, it's already done its job. Just the threat of them existing has already done its job. The fact that it's temporarily unavailable just gives us a nice little window, I suppose, for people to change that drone doctrine and gradually phase it out rather than just drop it straight at launch, which requires some, instant kind of, right, okay, the patch is here, everyone who flies drones needs to be in something else yesterday. That's bad. This gives you actually some time to train into new skills without having to just respec. You can still keep your drone skills, you can train into other stuff as well, and I like that. The shield extender cooldown time has been changed to 126 to 150 seconds. I think this is due to meta level now. Different meta levels will have a faster cooldown time. That's okay. Again, I said at the time I didn't think it was necessary to change that. A lot of folks in the feedback did say that, okay, it feels like a bit long. That we've gone from what we had before to this massive length of time. So 150 seconds now I think is actually pretty good. I think it was at 180 before? So it's 30 seconds faster. That's a good thing. I don't think that undoes any of the whole thing with shield extenders, but it does kind of, it's a nice little compromise for those folks who are like, no, it's too long. It's a bit better now. And the same there, but armor plates, cooldown time is 150 seconds as well. Differences between passive and active effects have been narrowed. Differences between the passive and active effects of the armor plates have been narrowed. This means that they've actually undone one of my favourite changes on this. Whereas extenders gave, for example, 2,500 flat and then 2,500 activated, armor plates did 4,000 flat, but only 1,000 activated. I really liked that. It meant that armor plates were much better at passives, and there was this actual difference between armor plates and shield extenders. Now they're looking like they're narrowing that, and it's going to be that armor plates are actually pretty close to being shield extenders, and I don't like that. I like the diversity they had, but I think this comes from people going, oh, but the shield extenders get the big boost, and it's like, yeah, but you get the bigger passive. Armor tanking has always been about passive. In EVE Online, there are 3 types of shield tanking, only 2 types of armor. Armor tanking is either active tanking or it is buffer tanking. Basically, have more armor than they can do damage. On the other side, shield had active tanking, buffer tanking with shields, and passive shield tanking. Passive shield tanking relies on the fact that shields recharge, which they don't really in Echo, so we still only get passive and active, buffer and active here for shield in Echoes. I liked the fact that buffer armor was going to be really, really powerful and quite cool. Now it doesn't look like it is. That's actually a nerf to what we had on live, because you've got the longer activation time, but you've got less of a passive effect. The passive effect is available for longer, you know, like by reducing the passive and increasing the active, you've actually nerfed yourself. So excellent change there, guys. I'm really disappointed in that one, to be honest. Anyway, let's move on. Number 5, the capacitor battery has been reverted to its original status, and the restart time has been changed to 90 seconds. Resistance to electronic warfare is under development. Now, this is an interesting one. I really didn't think that batteries needed, like any of the stuff that people were crying out for. Again, batteries, if you made batteries completely passive and took away the active completely, I would be okay with that. I've said before, I'd like to actually see capacitor boosters be a thing in EVE Echoes. I think those are a really cool module. They add a lot of versatility and variety. There's a lot of power involved in that. Ultimately, by changing things around here and just reverting it, this really actually changes a lot of the really cool stuff in this patch. It doesn't do what I think it should do, and it means batteries are still going to be absolutely ridiculous for the foreseeable future. But this bit here, Nina pointed out that one of the big problems with batteries is that if you're being hit by a neutralizer and you activate a battery, the extension that you've been given from the battery is actually immune to the neutralizer, and that's one of the big problems, that essentially you can just ignore the neutralizer, whereas this way around, if you activate it and the neutralizer can still chew into the activated bonus, well, that's better. And I kind of get that, but my preference would have been just to ultimately neuter off the active of a capacitor battery and instead give us cap boosters later on. That would be a really interesting change that actually gives some meaningful choices. Instead, the people who cry that, oh no, I'm not going to be completely immune to neutralizers anymore, are now getting their way, and I just don't agree with that. I don't know. An eventual fix. I just don't like the fact that they've taken out a fix, left the problem in the game on the promise that they'll eventually fix it. That is what this boils down to. That is what this boils down to. We had a fix, but it wasn't good enough for you guys, so now we're just not going to fix it until some point in the future. And I don't agree with that as sort of a balanced concept, but there we go. Number 7, modules that enhance weapon damage can provide more attribute bonuses. For example, a Type C module passive damage is 16.5, cooldown 6 to 18%. This means that they've now changed those. They're getting a bit more of a difference between the different meta levels of these, which is cool. A lot of people complained that especially things like the B, A, and X types were now pretty useless compared to the Type Cs. This looks like it'll fix that. Number 8, large autocannon accuracy fall off plus 2.16 kilometers. This is minor, but really nice. It actually pushes these into some nice areas in regards to range of other weaponry. So if you're actually fighting into the fall off, accuracy fall off as you should be, this is overall a nice buff for large autocannons without being huge. It helps against smaller targets. If you look at, like, for example, what a Megathron can do compared to what a Maelstrom can do, this brings those a little bit closer, which I like. I've said before that large autocannons, large strike cannons are actually not in a bad place. I think strike cannons still have too much power grid requirement and should use less of that, but this is a nice little change, especially since we're getting a nerf to the accuracy fall off of all weapons, thanks to the changes happening to the weapon upgrade and operation skills, now giving less fall off, but more optimal. That's a nice change that just ensures that the autocannons don't fall behind. The deceleration penalty of small and medium shield field modules has been changed to 25% and 37.5%. The signature radius penalty has been changed to 3,000 and 4,000. This means, yes, there's actually a reason now to use the different types of shield fields. Small gives you a smaller bubble, it's a 25% reduction. But it's only 15% additional resistances. The medium gives you 20% resistances, but now has 37.5% reduction to your speed, and a 4,000% signature radius boost. And then the large one, I think, is still 5,000% increase to signature radius. It's still a 50% reduction, but it's 25% on the resistances now. So there is actually a difference between using them, and it means that if you're in a nightmare, you're going to want to use a large shield field module now, now, which makes a lot of sense. Yes, it also means that that bubble is going to be bigger, which means it's easier to get inside of. It's another cute little way of balancing it. I really like these changes, and I'm sick of Nightmare pilots telling me that their ship is absolute crap. I had someone tell me that the Nightmare was basically the equivalent of a Hurricane Guardian, despite the Nightmare having 4 times the EHP post-nerf. Anyway, let's have a look. The Interceptor Disruption and Warp Drive bonuses have been reverted to their original status. The damage of Interceptor 1 and 2s have been changed to 2.5% and 10% for each level respectively. So this is still a reduction. It's still a nice change, I think, here overall. I think Interceptors are going to be in a good place, that they're still not going to be the best options for most things, but they're still going to be usable for those who are still using them. And for anyone crying that, oh, Interceptors didn't get the nerf they needed, I agree. I agree that Interceptors are still overpowered. Unfortunately, they're still the only real choice on the Empire ship trees at Tech 10. As a Tech 10 frigate pilot, you are in an Interceptor, or you're in a faction frigate, and that's really it. So I think we will eventually see Tech 10 assault frigates, at which point when those are added, we will have a bigger DPS nerf to the Interceptors, which then gives more variety. That's how I think this is going to be, that they're still a little overpowered to where they should be, a little overtuned might be a better word, a bit more overtuned to what an Interceptor should be, but that's kind of necessary because they're the only real option in the Empire ship trees. Once they are no longer the only option, then they can be reduced in order to sort of push you to fly other things as well. I think that's what they're going for here, and I do agree with that. The Disruption and Warp Drive bonuses, yeah, I kind of get that. It's a slight nerf. I was looking forward to the Executioner 2 with the Disruption bonuses, because that actually did some really nice stuff, pushed it well outside, pushed the Scram to a really nice range. Unfortunately, they are undoing that, which I don't like, but hey, clearly people complained, so they've done it. They are reducing that back to what it was before. Yeah, make of that what you will. A new exclusive bonus for the Condor Interceptor, small missile torpedo explosion velocity, plus 2.5% for each level. This isn't new, that was in the patch notes, wasn't it? I even explicitly remember saying that this actually really helped the Condor to take out things like drones. Whereas, you know, I don't know, I think it's just to do with application, basically, for missiles. People complaining that the Condor doesn't apply its damage as well as the others. Again, it's that whole thing of complaining about nerfs without understanding why they are the way they are. Missiles do what they do because they have a much longer optimal range than everything else. You can use a Condor and orbit well outside of web range and still apply your damage really, really well, which isn't so much the case with the others. The velocity of Interceptors has been changed from minus 12.5 to minus 4.1. Which means, if I am correct on this, that actually the Slasher 2 and the Acheron go again to being above the Dramiel and the Daredevil, I think, or it's going to be really, really close. I liked this. I really liked this change. Interceptors were so good with this. They were still 100% usable as tackle frigates. I saw plenty of people using them and using them effectively, but I think folks have just gone, I don't like the change, and thus NetEase have changed it because of people complaining that their overpowered ship was no longer, like, ridiculously overpowered. You could catch an Interceptor was the point. If someone didn't know how to actually approach in an Interceptor, you were going to get caught in one. Bradrick did a lot of testing on this. I did a lot of testing on this. You could easily approach a target, reach that target comfortably, and not have to worry about this stuff. It just meant that if you've made a mistake, if you screwed up, that there was actually a possibility to catch you. That's kind of disappearing with this. That's a really disappointing change, because it means Interceptors are going to be a lot harder to catch again. I don't think minus 4.1% is enough. Again, I could be wrong. This could all go live and I go, oh, actually, yeah, I'm catching Interceptors just fine. That was a really nice helping hand to destroyers in their anti-frigate role. I don't think minus 4.1% is enough anymore. The minus 12.5 was good. It felt good. You could catch them, but you could still use them. It was a nice mid-ground. This just feels like we're going way too towards the you can use them side of things, and not that you can counter them anymore. Again, we'll see. Please don't take this as the sky is falling, Interceptors are still broken. That's not what I'm saying. I think Interceptors are going to still be a bit overpowered for what they should be, but that they will ultimately have that reduced later on. I still think it's a nerf. I'm not considered it's enough. I'm not convinced it's enough anymore. We'll see. The heavy interdiction cruiser has kept the +1 high slot, but it's lost its -1 mid slot. Good. That means that it still has all of its mid slots, but it gets the additional damage to the high slots. That's nice. I don't know why they bothered putting this -1 mid slot. Let's take tackle modules away from a tackle ship. They've reverted that, but they've kept the damage bonus to it. Excellent, we like this. The bonus on Apocalypse Strikers has been reverted to original status. Good, it didn't need those. The damage bonus on Nightmares has been increased from 12% to 15%, so perhaps some people can stop complaining that their Nightmares are apparently useless now. Nightmares weren't useless in the patch. The fact that the Nightmare was still by far the best shield field module ship in the entire game, and by a notable margin. As I said, it's like 4 times the EHP of the Hurricane or the Drake. It could be that good after such heavy nerfs just shows how massively overpowered it was to begin with, but hey, giving it some extra damage here, I'm okay with that. I think that that's a nice little thing to help these battleship pilots out. Does it make the Nightmare suddenly useful for things it wasn't useful for before? No, the Nightmare still fits its role, but it's just got more DPS now. The disruption range bonus of the Armageddon 2s has been increased from 10% to 12.5%, making the Armageddon 2 a pretty much, possibly even better than the Balgorn now. That's going to require some checking and testing, I think. The Armageddon 2 is just getting buffs out the wazoo here. That is really quite crazy. Like, it's getting better disruption range now, on top of it having better E-War, an additional low slot, and buffs to large lasers. Cool. Yeah, there we go. Blood Raider anomalies, lock speed blueprints, i.e. the targeting computers, have been changed to capacitor recharge rate blueprints. And of course, Chimera takes this opportunity to sharpen her claws right next to the microphone. I can't shoo her away though, she's just out of reach. Bless her. So lock speed blueprints, which are the targeting computers, have been changed to capacitor recharge rate blueprints. Makes sense, it's Blood Raider. Serpentis anomalies, looking here that the battery blueprints have been changed to flight velocity. This is cool. That means that we're getting auxiliary thrusters in more places now, which will help reduce their cost a bit, which I'm all for. Sancha anomalies, capacitor recharge rate, and power grid blueprints have been changed to inertia modifier and cargo hold. Cargo hold? Okay, but the inertia modifier, that makes sense. Inertia modifier on a Sancha ship makes sense, and the maximum limit for each bounty of combat rewards has been decreased to 50 million. This is huge, and I am so happy for this last one. Basically, before, you got so many weekly commendations that you could use, and they would allow you to basically earn a bounty tick again up to the cost of 200 million. Now, almost no one hits 200 million except for the very top players flying some of what are already the most powerful ISK-making machines ever. By giving them the ability to double those already massive ticks was a case of making the rich even richer. By dropping that to 50 million, it means that anyone who's capable of earning 50 million is going to be essentially getting the maximum benefit. That means that the maximum benefit is capped much lower down, which means more people are achieving that maximum benefit, and it is not making the already super rich even super richer, if that makes sense. You're not massively scaling it up for the super rich, you're keeping it to basically being optimal at sort of a Tech 10 level, definitely a Tech 10 level, but considerably lower than requires carrier, and I'm all for that change. Anyway, folks, this is a bit of a mixed bag. No, we don't know when it's going live. I wonder if we'll get feedback for the feedback, and some of this might change again. I think a lot of it we're just going to have to see how this actually ends up working once it's live, so when it's live, let's have a look and see what we think. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, folks. Of course, this video has just been my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking in regards to all of this as well. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. I'm happy with some of it, I'm meh on some of it, and I'm actively a little bit annoyed at some of it. But hey, we'll see how this pans out. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Make sure to check out the Redbubble store as well. I have just launched some exclusive new merchandise on there, commemorating one of the biggest mistakes I ever made on this channel, so hopefully you enjoy that one. Check it out as well. Otherwise, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!